Hello, SpongeX here, and welcome to another episode of Video Games Worth Taking Your Time. Last time we looked over Banjo Tooie, and today we are looking over the sequel, Banjo Tooie. Now, Banjo Tooie is what I personally think is the greatest video game sequel of all time. I know a lot of people are probably going to disagree with me on that. This game seems to get a lot of mixed criticism. It was praised back then, but it seems to get a lot of complaints nowadays. But I'm going to give my fair share for why I think it works. Now, some complain that this game is too big. The levels are too expansive, and they connect with each other, which makes for a lot of backtracking. But personally, that's one reason I loved this game. It just it was a game that you just didn't want to end, and it was almost a game that you thought was never going to end. And so when it comes to a point where you finally beat it, it makes it feel accomplished because of all you went through. But what's also great about this game is how expansive it is to the original. Right from the start, you have all the moves you had to learn in the original game, and so it just feels very well earned. Most video games that have it were right from the start, even if it's a sequel. The character somehow lost all their abilities. This one, you have them all. However, it's not enough. This game is much bigger and darker. And so Banjo and Kazooie are going to need more than what they already know in order to survive this new world they're in. And speaking of which, the new hub world was an interesting concept. The Isle of Hags. It was the world beyond Banjo's hometown. Because, although I personally do think Gruntilda's Lair was a more fun hub world in the original game, I feel like Isle of Hags makes more sense. So, one thing I didn't quite understand with, Banjo-Kazooie's Gruntilda's Lair is how there were all these different towns and civilizations with happy-go-lucky people inside of it. It made no sense how all these worlds were somehow inside of a lair of a witch. If you think about it, it just doesn't make much sense. Now, it was one thing for Mario 64, where you were inside Peach's castle, and there were all these magical paintings that took you to these magical lands. Now, that kind of made more sense, and Bowser took over a lot of them as well. But for Banjo-Kazooie, it just doesn't make sense how there's like a little Christmas town inside of, you know, an evil witch's lair. I don't know. Some of it just doesn't quite make a lot of sense, but that's what I like about Isle of Hags. It feels like it's an actual part of the world Banjo lives in. And the way you get to it is really cool, too. The fact that it... Like, I remember when I first played this game and didn't quite understand, like, how video games were programmed. I was just so amazed at how the first level in this game is Spiral Mountain, the first level in the original game, except it's a little more destroyed after what happened in the opening cutscene, where Gruntilda returns from the dead and destroys the place. And so, it's a more sad and gloomy looking version of it, but I liked how, as she escaped, her and her new sisters basically, drilled a hole through a wall, and it created, an entryway to the rest of the world. And I just remember, like, going back to the original Banjo-Kazooie and trying to see if there was a way to get past all of that. No, there wasn't, unfortunately, but, it was such a magical time, though, like, to play both these games as a kid. It really made you think, like, these games were somehow connected to each other, and it made you try to find a way to make it possible until you gave up. So it's also possible to learn some new underwater abilities. You can learn how to swim faster. So Kazooie no longer does all the swimming now. You can have Banjo help her out. And she also has this ability where she can shoot out like a torpedo. She can even shoot eggs underwater now. You have to learn these abilities first, but, so this is, from a save file where the game's already been beaten, so I'm just, revisiting the game, showing you, like, all the attention to detail there is in this game and what you can do in the game. I already posted, like, playthroughs of this, video game in the past, but there's no commentary in them, but, so for those who actually want to see how this game feels like in a, you know, a progressive format, feel free to look that up on my channel. It should be on one of my playlists. So originally at the beginning of this game, the original tutorial character, Bottles the Mole, was tragically killed off by Gruntilda when she returned, and so he was a ghost, an angel during like this part, and he couldn't go any further. But the least he could do was remind you of how to use your old abilities. But unlike the first game, that stuff is optional. So you can either just skip through this area entirely, or, you know, revisit all these little molehills, and his angel will then tell you what you can do. But one thing that really surprised me, though, is that you could still go inside Gruntilda's lair, although you couldn't explore it entirely because it's a bit destroyed now, so the entryways are blocked off. I still thought it was really cool how they did that. But one thing you might notice compared to the original Banjo-Kazooie is Banjo Tooie has much better lighting effects. The original, it was absent, but here it is very noticeable. I like how they gave the lair like a greenish glow, and it not only reflects off the environments, but even the characters. And Banjo actually has a shadow this time. In the original game, although there was a shadow, it wasn't shaped like his character. It was just like a round circle placed under the characters. So here they have like, they did some kind of technique where, I believe what they did was they took like a duplicate model, but they flattened it and painted it black, and it copies all the movements that the characters do who are assigned to Shadow. And so, yeah, it doesn't look too great nowadays, per se, but for the time this was made, this was really impressive. It was very uncommon to see such detailed-looking shadows in a video game. Like, I remember that really stood out when I first played this as a kid. I was just stunned by the visuals of this game. They might look a bit dated now, but they were still very impressive for their time. I still think, like, compared to other video games that were made around this time, this one stands out really well. Like, I honestly have a hard time looking back on the old Legend of Zelda games for N64. I just don't think they have aged visually well. But I can still look back at Banjo, Kazooie, and Tooie and think they look great. For what limitations they had, it's like Rare knew how to try making everything as detailed as they possibly could at the time, and it's no reason why I would love to see a remake, because I'd love to see just how more beautiful these games would look with less limitations. But yeah, it's also cool how there's a flight pad in Spiral Mountain in Banjo Tooie, so you can actually fly through the air. Unfortunately, you cannot reach the top of Gruntilda's lair. I was kind of hoping you could do that, but you can actually see a little bit beyond Spiral Mountain, like over the hills and stuff like that. You can even reach areas that were originally impossible, like the top of the waterfall. And I also like how they upgraded Kazooie's beak bomb attack to where holding it can allow her to charge across the screen. I thought that was really cool. And yeah, one thing I also love about the sequel is how they gave Kazooie new eggs to use. In the original, she could only shoot basic blue eggs, but in this one, they upgraded it to where there's fire eggs, grenade eggs, ice eggs, and little battery-operated ones called, well, not clockwork Kazooie eggs. It's basically like a remote-controlled detonator. They also gave Kazooie the option to shoot eggs in first person using a crosshair, and although the controls aren't that great because the N64 lacked the second analog stick when this game first came out, so it makes it a little tricky when playing on Xbox 360 or Xbox One, but I thought it was still a really cool feature, and I'd love to see a remake or sequel that refines those controls much greater. I also like how, for revisiting the training level in this game, they brought back, well, they brought in items that originally weren't in this level, like the running shoes, and they added a new detail in this game where you can actually run across water while using them. That was impossible to do in the original. They also brought back the wading boots, although they have less of a role in this game. They were barely used. Same could be said about the running shoes, in fact. They weren't used as prominently as they were in the original games. Like, they were used at least for, like, one challenge. They introduced two new kind of shoes in this game, too. Spring boots that allow Kazooie to jump extra high, and the claw clamber boots, which allow her to suction cup up walls. I kind of found it cool how they turned this area into an enemy training station, where enemies just spawn out of that hole in the ground, and so it allows you to get used to the combat in this game. One thing I find really sad, though, is what happened to Banjo's house. It's kind of depressing. So, well, Gruntilda, of course, destroyed it at the beginning of this game, but, I mean, going inside of it is really depressing. Just the music and scenery. God, like, the music and visuals just really kind of demonstrate, like, the horror Banjo and Kazooie must have been witnessing when they came to their house and witnessed this. You can just kind of feel the emotion that must be going through them. I have no idea what happened to Tootie. For some reason, she was excluded from this game. She only made a few little cameos in the form of pictures, but that was it. And then the sequel, Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, once again ignored her, but made a little cameo of her name pop up on like a little store display or something like that, and that was it. But so it was nice to see how in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate they actually brought her back as a little background character. I thought that was nice. At least Nintendo gave that character some recognition. So that's about all there is to explore. I forgot to show this during my footage, but one little detail I accidentally skimmed over was how, so originally after being Banjo-Kazooie, the villain Gruntilda was crushed under a rock. And so in the beginning of this game, the rock is destroyed and she's broken free as a resurrected corpse. And so I found it funny how in this game you can still see the hole in the ground that she fell through, and it's shaped just like a cartoony witch. I thought that was kind of funny. So one thing I like about this game is how after saving the Jinjos, like in the original games, they had like the 5 Jinjos across levels. In this game they have multiple Jinjos of different colors across the lands, and collecting them returns them back to the houses they live in. So like the first part you like usually get loaded up to when you start up, when you resume a save file in this game, you're always started up at Jinjo Village, and that's where the Jinjos live. Unfortunately, the gray Jinjos were killed off, like, you didn't actually see it, but you'll notice, like, how there's all these different colored houses, but then there's rubble of the color gray, and there's a signpost next to it. If you read it, it mentions, here lies, the house of the gray Jinjos. They were run over by Gruntilda's drill. So that's kind of sad and depressing that a race of Jinjos were killed off in this game. Then they also have a king of Jinjos, King Jingling. Originally he wanted you to, like he gave you the task of rescuing all the Jinjos along with giving you a Jiggy to help you start your journey. So I really love the lore in this game. They took very minor elements from the very first game and they expanded them to a bigger role. I mean, yeah, they could have given them more significance though, but it was still really cool to see them expand this world. That's one thing that I don't feel like a lot of sequels in video games do anymore. It's like whenever you make a new Mario game, for instance, they never really expand beyond the world that much. I mean, Mario Odyssey did a nice effort at least, but regardless, it still felt like it couldn't go further than the status quo. I mean, yeah, it finally allowed us to explore more of Peach's castle, but it still didn't show us like how the world connects to the rest of the world. It's still a magical floating island in the sky. It doesn't have like pathways that lead to like a forest or a nearby town or something like that. And so, yeah, that's one thing that kind of disappoints me about Mario games. They always have like this weird like little sense of disconnect from the other games in the past. And Sonic the Hedgehog games, they just don't even care about continuity anymore, it seems like. So I mean, they were doing a good job at trying to make it feel like it had some kind of connectivity back in the adventure era, but then ever since the disaster that was Sonic 06, it feels like Sega just said screw it. They'd rather the games be campy jokes now instead of actual development, and it saddens me. And so that's one reason I was sad that we never got a Banjo 3E, a real sequel. Instead, we got a spin-off title disguised as a sequel. which was Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts. Now, Nuts and Bolts, it's not a bad game, but it is a bad sequel. As a Banjo game, it is terrible, but as a game on its own, it's actually not bad. And I'm definitely going to consider doing video games worth taking your time on that eventually. Yeah, Rare really knew how to make some good, illusions in this game. So, you know, it's like nowadays you can tell that, these aren't actually trees, they're just wall textures, but they still did a good job at trying to give it the sense that this is like, a forest, like a hallway of trees and stuff like that. That's one reason another reason I'd love to see a remake of this. I'd love to see how would this area look if it actually had like 3D models of trees everywhere. Made it feel more like than just a wall of trees painted on it. The one thing I really liked about this game was how they had like a temple that belonged to the Jiggies. So they introduced a new character called Master Jiggy Wiggy, and he's kind of like the owner of all the little Jiggies you've collected in the original game, and there's now like more Jiggies you have to collect. And so I thought that made a lot of sense. In the original game, it was strange how you had to bring the Jiggies to like these different little altars to open up new levels. And I like how in this game they had it where it's all one area, and they luckily added like quick warp segments in this game to make backtracking much easier. And that's one thing I don't get. Like, so many people complain about this game, like how it had too much backtracking, but at least it actually gave you a way to quick travel. I mean, it would be, if they ever remade this, it would be convenient if they expanded it further by allowing you to quick travel through like a pause menu. Now, yeah, I can agree that would make things better, but honestly, I didn't think it was that hard to just find like a warp pad or a silo to warp to a previous location. And I personally thought like this place looked very epic for its time. I mean, the way like when you first walk in, you see a reflection of Banjo on the floor. That was a very unique detail for its time. Not many video games had that effect, and I can only think of one other video game that had that effect, and that was Conker's Bad Fur Day, another game by Rare. The music is kind of nice too. I'd love to see like how this would sound like in a remake, like if they reorchestrated it, got an actual chorus. I like how there's a secret back here. It's not that great of a deal though. Like, I actually found all the secrets before even finding these signs, but so yeah, if you go behind that tarp, or whatever, curtain, whatever you call it, there are 3 signs that give you hints on where to find certain items in the hub world, but I found them before even finding these signposts, oddly enough, but... Yeah, like, I can definitely see some of the criticism that, like, some people said this game is a little too hard to figure out at times, and, yeah, I can agree that this game will waste a lot of your time, but I think it was time well spent. I don't regret all the hours I put into this game. However, it helped, though, that when I was a kid, I got the guidebook before I got the game, so I studied the guidebook before actually playing the game, and... I remember the guidebook was such an interesting case. Like, I remember first hearing about Banjo Tooie in an old Nintendo Power magazine that was featuring Kirby 64, and I just remember how it finally revealed Banjo Tooie within the pages, and I was just blown away. I was just so ready for this game, and so 3 months before this game came out, I remember going to Walmart, and they had the guidebook 3 months before the game was even out. And I just got so excited. I just begged my parents to buy me that, and so eventually they gave in, and so I was just like spending the next few days just looking through the pages and screenshots, just getting so hyped for this game, and waiting for the release date so I could finally play it myself. And then came the Christmas of 2000, and this was my big present. I got Banjo Tooie on N64, and Yeah, so this is a very memorable game for me. I still love it as much as I did as a kid. It's just such a great game. And one thing I really love about this game is that you can actually split up for once. So you actually get to see how Banjo would last without Kazooie, and see how Kazooie can manage without Banjo. And personally, I think Kazooie's the better character to play as. But that's what's fun about this game, though. It adds a new challenge. Being forced to play as these characters outside of their comfort zone is interesting. I mean, just look at that. Banjo trying to do a backflip. He can't do it without Kazooie to help them. It's just kind of funny and pitiful. But Banjo can still learn some pretty interesting abilities he can do with his backpack. Like this ability somehow allows him to be protected from harmful substances like lava or acid. And then this ability allows him to hop across water or some other dangerous terrain. He cannot climb up hills, though. Then this ability allows him to scoop up certain characters and help them traverse into certain areas. And then this ability allows him to restore health, which is actually necessary in certain parts where... there are certain parts where Banjo will get hit automatically, and the best thing you can do is... reach a resting point, heal up, and then get hit again, go to a resting point, heal up, and so it's for puzzle solving, basically. But hearing these chicken sound effects in the background, it kind of makes it sound like Kazooie's making those noises. So Kazooie, she almost can do everything she could already do without Banjo, but there are still certain things she can't do. She cannot grab on the ledges. She moves a lot faster, though, without Banjo, but her controls are a little more slippery. She can still shoot the eggs, she can backflip, she can jump higher than Banjo could with her, and she can even eventually learn how to glide. That's like one of the last abilities you get in this game. Oh, you can't leave from there. Unfortunately, the split up is very limited. Now, I've heard some players complain that this game should have allowed Banjo and Kazooie to split up whenever they wanted, and I honestly thought it was clever how they limited players from doing that, because it allows players to try to not cheese through things. You know, imagine if you could split up anywhere, people would be able to break this game. And so Rare wanted to make sure people actually got puzzled during a few parts. They had to use their minds to figure out how to get past certain parts. So back there was the entrance of Bottles' house. Originally you were able to go into that, but after Bottles came back to life later on in the game, for some reason his house was sealed off, and I always thought that was kind of frustrating. I wish you could still revisit that. So that's one thing I would definitely do in a remake, not seal it off anymore. Now I can imagine they did it though because they didn't want players to, they didn't want to bother programming a live Bottles back into the game. So, I mean, after you beat the game, it's why they went back home. So, yeah, that's their way of saying you can't see Bottles, basically. But so here's the first official level in the game, Mayan Temple. I remember, like, when I first entered this level, it was definitely a little more intense than I was expecting. Like, I remember, like, first seeing the screenshots for this, and I was thinking this was going to be, like, a more whimsical kind of level. Then you enter in it, and you see, like, how it looks kind of gothic, and the music is a little more intense. I was just like, ooh, this is kind of, dark. That's one thing I liked about this game, though. I mean, it's like, the original game was like, well, it's like they knew, the people who first played this were like little kids, and they knew the kids were going to be older by the time the sequel came out. And not only are the audiences who played this older, but so is Banjo. Banjo, he has a more deeper, mature voice. In the original, like, whenever he'd jump, he'd make, like, the wee, woo, and now he makes, like, the huh, huh voice. And there are these strange little stone guys that you can only speak to after turning into a stone, which is a transformation in this level. So if you try talking to them normally, you won't be able to understand them. Ah! Ah! What the hell is that? What the hell is that? I kind of like how they did that, though, because, like, I remember in the original game, there were hazards where, like, if you tried stepping through the swamp or, the hot sands in, like, the other levels, they'd have it where you would just hear, like, a bite sound effect and Banjo would jump out of the water or something, or get hurt, and so, but you didn't see anything, and I like how in this game you actually see, like, a little swamp monster pop out and he laughs after he bit you. I thought that was a really cool touch. So, just like the sandcastle in Treasure Trove Cove in Banjo-Kazooie, oddly enough, the first level in this game has, like, a cheat code area, and it's this little temple here. You gotta go inside of it, and, well, the first game, you had to type in the letters by, pounding them on the ground, shaped like a keyboard. In this one, you gotta shoot, like, these pillars in a first-person, shooter segment. Here's the giant snake. Here, I was thinking that snake was probably going to attack you or something originally, and surprisingly, it doesn't. Originally, there was like a challenge where you had to sneak past him to get like the jiggy he was guarding. You had to move the control stick as slowly as possible so Banjo could tippy-toe across. Otherwise, that thing would wake up. And it's a pretty tricky segment. It was really easy to wake up. And oddly enough, after you get the jiggy, nothing you do will wake him up all of a sudden. Thought that was kind of strange, but I remember like thinking if you woke up that snake was gonna attack you or something, but all it did was eat the jiggy and it spits it up once it falls back asleep. But I like the glow effect they added in here. Kind of has like kind of like a very bright bluish glow in here. But so here's the cheat code wall where you can type in the cheat codes that you can unlock in the game. And wait a minute. Wait a minute. What the hell? Was that intentional? I'm not even gonna pronounce that, but and then if you spell that out backwards, it says arse. Man, rare. They had some naughty humor. This is an E-rated game? Sheesh. I do like how you have like this wall of cheats though, unlike the original game where every time you typed in a cheat you'd have to restart the game to have it take effect. So I like how in this game it allowed you to remember the cheats. So there are more cheats you can get in this game that can break the game a little more, but I chose not to use them though because I want to beat this game fairly. Only use the cheats that you could unlock in the game through progression, but however, so originally there were these cheats you can unlock that could allow you to reach certain areas faster, but, I didn't use those, though, because when you do, you get, like, a little threatening message that pops up, warning you that if you, use that, they'll, prevent you from uploading this, your high scores onto, Xbox Live. So, I just chose to skip that, but technically, it wouldn't hurt to do it now, though, because I'm, you know, my score doesn't really compare to anyone, so if I wanted to, I could use some of those cheats nowadays. It wouldn't bother me, but so here's Humba Wumba's Wigwam. So she's like the new Mumbo Jumbo in this game. Originally, Mumbo was the one who gave you the transformations. In this game, they gave him a supporting role where he's actually playable a little bit. So they added a new character called Humba Wumba. She's like a rival shaman who, for some reason, she hates Mumbo Jumbo for reasons never explained. They like hate each other. But anyways, she wants to help Banjo. self-proclaims that she's a better shaman than Mumbo. And honestly, I think she's right, though, because the transformations in Banjo-Kazooie are pathetic in comparison. This one isn't a very good example, though, but your first transformation is just a stone version of Banjo. All he can do is waddle around and tackle things, but that's the thing. Almost like every ability in this game has the ability to fend themselves off from enemies, attack enemies, and a lot of the ones in the original cannot do that. But yeah, I like the transformations in this one a lot better. They're just so much better than where all they were mostly useful for in the original game was just crawling through tight spaces. I mean, the only useful one was the crocodile and the bumblebee, but the others were just kind of ridiculous. So this is a part that Banjo-Kazooie normally can't get into until you open like the warp portal that can allow them to go in it. The reason why is because only stone characters are allowed in here. These guys are pretty racist. I like how you can figure out what they're saying. Isa kick your furry buttocks. Ugly burr and bared Isa. So he basically said, ugly bear and bird is. Take this, you racist jerks. Kick your buttock. I always love the humor of these games. However, like, if they were to ever make a remake or a sequel, I wouldn't mind seeing actual voice acting as long as it's good voice acting. I think what they should do, though, is make it optional. So for those who want the traditional gibberish, they can't. But for those who actually want it to feel more like Conker's Bad Fur Day did, where it actually had voice acting and lip syncing, I personally would love to see that. I mean, Banjo originally did speak English, as seen in Diddy Kong Racing. Like, when selecting him, he actually said, "I'm Banjo." And, I just don't get why all of a sudden they decided to make him a gibberish-speaking character. I mean, it was silly at its time, but I can see why some people would find it annoying, at least. I remember my parents found this game very annoying. Yeah, I'll admit, though, it'd be hard to give these characters proper voices. I mean, it's like, you'd want them to sound silly at certain points, but then it'd be really hard to make them sound more serious during certain parts, and that could be where the problem lies. Like, I could definitely see Banjo having a voice that, like, I could see Bill Farmer voicing Goofy. I mean, Banjo, like, using the same voice he did for, like, Goofy from Disney. And Kazooie, that's a tough one, though, because it's like, if you tried making her sound like how she does in the game, her voice would probably get very annoying. It'd sound very gargly, and I don't know, but, I mean, it works great, like, for her sound effects, like when she's flapping, but for a speaking voice, that would be really hard. I mean, do we really want Kazooie sounding like Marge Simpson? I don't really think so. But I could definitely see, like, them getting Chris Seaver to reprise his role as Gruntilda, though. Like, I bet he could do a great, like, English-speaking voice for her. That'd be funny to hear. And if I'm not mistaken, Grant Kirkhope, the composer of this game, he did the voice of Mumbo Jumbo. So yeah, I could definitely see him being like an English voice of him as well. Yeah, like, word of advice for those who are playing this game for the first time, like, when going inside Bottles' house the first time, make sure you explore every inch of that and talk to every character you can, because there's a certain ability you can get in this game where once Bottles' house is sealed up later, there is no way of going back to get it. But if you talk to one of Bottles' sons, he'll teach you the ability to zoom in first person, and that can be, like, pretty fun feature to use, and it can be pretty easy for, like, shooting enemies from a long distance, like sniping them in. So yeah, like make sure you get that while you can, because if you miss it before reviving bottles towards the end of the game, it's like tough luck, you lost that power up. So that's one thing I would definitely fix in a remake. I would definitely make it possible to go back and get that if you missed it the first time. So Mumbo's hut is very different in this game. It's a lot bigger. It has like a second floor, and I remember hearing some people said they hated what they did with Mumbo's hut in this game. Like they thought it got tedious to have to keep climbing upstairs. But honestly, it's not that much of a travel. I don't get why so many people complained about it. I'll admit it was a little difficult to figure out at first. Like I remember when I first became Mumbo, I was wondering how do I turn back into Banjo, and all I had to do was move him over back to Banjo's chair. Keep in mind, when I played video games as a kid, I didn't read very much. I tried figuring a lot of stuff out on my own, or I just wasn't patient enough to read all the walls of dialogue characters made. But so yeah, it's like if I knew that earlier, though, that would have come in handy. But I like Mumbo's new design in this game. He looks a little cutesier. Like he looked really freaky in the original game, I thought, but they gave him more of a cuter design in this game, it seems like. Although he doesn't do a whole lot, I still thought it was really cool that you gotta control Mumbo in this game. He's mostly just used for progression in certain levels. You'll find these certain pads that have his face on it, and you stand on them, and he'll use like a certain spell. But some of his spells feel very pointless, but some of them feel very significant. Like, I'd say his most important role in this game is his role in Jolly Roger's Lagoon. Like, he's necessary in order to progress like a majority of that level. He grants the ability for Banjo-Kazooie to breathe underwater, and you have to go to like a certain point in the game where he like does like a little sun dance that causes the sun to provide Banjo-Kazooie with enough oxygen to. It doesn't make much sense, but it was still really cool, and I thought like that was one of his most important roles in this game. Like this one, all he does is in this level, all he did was summon like a giant golden Goliath, and he takes control of it. And so that part was only cool the first time you do it, but then after you've done all you need with him, like busting down the doors necessary, there's really no more further use for that. So yeah, it's kind of a shame, but fine, bitch. Be that way. Yeah, I just love how like here, wait, no. No, I don't think I will. Me tainting your magic water with Mumbo junk. But I just love how like Rare seems to have that in consideration. They're probably, you know, they wanted to make sure that only Banjo and Kazooie could transform, like when going in the magic pool. And so they kept in mind, well, players are probably going to try to see what happens if they go in as Mumbo or Banjo and Kazooie by themselves. So what are we going to do about that? And so they programmed in different dialogue and excuses for the characters to not, you know, transform. And so I just loved like how when going inside as Mumbo, the feud kicks in between Humba Wumba and Mumbo. Like you can tell how Humba is annoyed that Mumbo's in there. She's telling him to get out, and I love how like when you go in the pool at Transform, she tells you to quit swimming around in it. I thought that was really funny. And then although they didn't really give very good excuses for Banjo and Kazooie separately, I still thought it was funny though how it's like, so what would happen if I tried transforming while playing as Kazooie? And then she just tells Kazooie to get out, that the magic won't work that way. And so apparently the magic only works if Banjo and Kazooie are together. Not quite sure why, but I still thought that was kind of funny how they made sure that players wouldn't try cheating their way through that. Whoa, that was weird. And originally there was a Jiggy up here, up on top of the woman statue. Yeah, I'll admit as a kid I had no idea what that was supposed to be, but yeah, like upon getting older it's like, oh, it was just some kind of like woman even with limitations, Rare knew how to make their games look appealing. Sunset, the trees. They really knew how to create the illusion of stuff off in the distance, even if there really wasn't any. So yeah, one of the cheats I have activated is called fall proof or something like that. It's where you will no longer get hit when falling off a great height. And I also have another cheat activated called a honeycomb back, where whenever you get hit, if you wait patiently without getting hit again, one of your honeycomb pieces will come back. And so that could be very convenient for like when tackling the final battle, because the final battle in this game is very challenging. I remember as a kid I could not complete it without that cheat needed, and the cheats are not easy to get though. You gotta search really hard for these. Heck, I had a guidebook and I still had trouble finding some of the cheats. Some of them were just hard to reach, but I got all but one of them still. Yeah, there's one that to this day I still cannot get, and I'm sure a lot of you know which one it is. It's the race against Canary Mary in Quad Cuckoo Land, and that one is just so frustrating. If they ever remade this game, please either cut that part out or repurpose it to be a more fair competition and not have it be a button mash fest. My god. I mean, they really need to tone down Canary Mary's difficulty. It is ridiculous. She is programmed to go faster than you no matter what, and it's ridiculous. Like, they say the cheat in that is to, well, the secret to that is to go, like, at a fair, even pace and then speed up right at the very end. I tried doing that in so many different ways. I got very close many times, but she still somehow gets that certain burst of speed, and I'm tired of attempting it, because I just really got my thumb sore from doing that in the past, and I am not willing to go through that pain ever again. It is not fun at all. Apparently, all the final cheat does, like, I remember unlocking the final cheat through the cheat menu in, the N64 version, and all it does is give you access to, an out-of-order jukebox inside, one of the levels. Originally it was out of order, but once you get the final cheat, it allows it to turn on. But there's, you can actually get, like, an actual cheat code you can type in. Like, you can look it up online, and I think all you have to do is type in the word cheat or Cheeto, and then you have to type in jukebox spelled backwards. That was strange. Kazooie just popped out of there. But, well, that's all I have to show for now. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Goodbye.